Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In this video, we are going to be talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves and their re-signing of Malik Beasley. However, before I get too far into it, I want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out because I get a lot of extra support, and it helps you out because you get to see all of my content right there in your subscription box. So go ahead and subscribe. Without further ado, let's talk about the Timberwolves. Malik Beasley is a wing player the Timberwolves acquired in a trade with the Denver Nuggets at the trade deadline. Actually, it was a four-team trade. The Houston Rockets, Denver Nuggets, and Atlanta Hawks. They acquired Malik Beasley and Juancho Hernangomez in exchange for the 22nd overall pick, which became Zeke Naji. This was an effort for the Denver Nuggets to clear up some room in their rotation to play guys like Michael Porter Jr. a bit more, and also to get that first-round pick, and finally to avoid having to pay Beasley and Hernangomez, who were both restricted free agents in this offseason. The Timberwolves has struck a deal with Beasley for a 4-year, $60 million extension, and I think it's a massive overpay. If I were the Timberwolves, I would have offered Malik Beasley 4 years, $40 million. I would not have gone over that because I don't think he's worth that much. I think that Malik Beasley is a player who's terrific in transition, a nice finisher who can space the floor, gets right into the corner for that wide open corner three, and that's where he's at his best. He can also, in the half court, be effective as a spot-up shooter, which actually makes him a really nice fit alongside D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns. However, after drafting Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns aren't the only two stars on this team anymore. Anthony Edwards isn't a star yet, but obviously they're hoping that he becomes one. And he plays the same position as Malik Beasley. So you just invested the first overall pick and $60 million into the same position with two different players. I don't love this move. I have a lot of questions about how they're going to make this all work, because in addition to those two, they also have Josh Okogie, Jared Culver, Jaden McDaniels, who are all young players that are going to need playing time on the wings in order to develop. So you've really got a logjam at those positions. McDaniels maybe will be in the G League for this upcoming season because he's a pretty raw prospect and he's going to need time to develop. So that leaves you... Well, you can even go to the point guard spot too. You have D'Angelo Russell and Ricky Rubio, who are both going to play big minutes for you at that spot. At the shooting guard, you have Anthony Edwards and Malik Beasley. And small forward, you have Josh Okogie and Jarrett Culver. You have to think Beasley is going to be playing some three, which I don't think is terrific because he's only 6'5" and he's not a particularly good defender. So then what happens with Josh Okogie and Jarrett Culver's minutes? Okogie is probably the better player than Culver, so I would assume that he'll probably get the starting spot there unless they decide to start Malik Beasley at the three, which I, like I said before, wouldn't love because he's not a good defensive player, and asking him to guard threes with the strength at that position in the NBA with guys like LeBron James, Kevin Durant, even on a bad team, you're asking Malik Beasley to guard Harrison Barnes. I think Harrison Barnes would have a field day if he had Malik Beasley guarding him. So there's not a lot of good matchups for Beasley if he's playing the three, and I think that they probably shouldn't do that. So that means that Malik Beasley is a highly paid sixth man coming off your bench. That means that Okogie is probably the starter at the three, since he's the better player than Culver. And if you have Beasley coming off the bench and playing some minutes at the three, then where does Jared Culver play? Jared Culver needs minutes. He's your first-round pick from last year, the 6th overall pick from just 1 year ago. You can't just give up on him. So this makes me think that Jared Culver might be a guy we start hearing trade rumors about. I would think that he would still have some value on the open market, and you have to at least make an effort to try to cash in on that value if you're not going to be playing him for more than, I think, like 12 minutes per game is what I could see for Culver. Like, Okogie, Beasley, Edwards, Russell, and Rubio are going to take up so many minutes between the 1 and the 3. that I just don't know if there's going to be time for Jarrett Culver. So I think that a Jarrett Culver trade is certainly a possibility by the end of this offseason. And if they do make that trade, there is clearly a position that they need to address, the power forward position. At this point, the players that they have under contract there are Amari Spellman and Jared Vanderbilt. I don't even know if they're going to be able to keep Vanderbilt around because he is on a non-guaranteed contract, and I don't know if that contract being guaranteed is going to work out with their whole cap situation. This is also challenging because, right, like I said, in the Malik Beasley trade, they didn't only acquire Malik Beasley. They also acquired a second player who is a restricted free agent, Juancho Hernangomez. And overpaying Malik Beasley like this makes it so that they're going to have to choose between either retaining Hernangomez or using their mid-level exception. And obviously you would have really liked to have done both because Hernangomez has shown that he is a capable big man who's worth rotational minutes. He's not a bad player whatsoever. He can actually space the floor decently well, and stretch fours are certainly valuable in today's NBA. He's a good defensive player, and he fights really hard on that end of the floor. So you want to keep him around, but you also want to use your mid-level exception, and as of right now, they have to address that power forward position. Amari Spellman and Jared Vanderbilt are not viable options to be trotting out to start at power forward for you. And quite honestly, I don't really think that Juancho Hernangomez is either, as much as I like his game as a 3-and-D big man. That leaves you with the mid-level exception to address your need at power forward. And now that I look at it a little bit, there's actually not too many intriguing options there. Like Paul Millsap might be the only player on the roster who is, or on the free agent market, who is head and shoulders better than Juancho Hernangomez. And I think that the Nuggets are going to work really, really hard to keep Millsap on the roster. But, I mean, maybe there's another option somewhere else that you could bring in to play the power forward. Otherwise, Hernangomez, I'm assuming they'll bring him back, is going to end up being the starter. Which I don't love, but it's also not the worst thing. So I don't think that that's the biggest drawback from the Beasley contract. I think that the fact that it messes up their future cap flexibility and they're not going to be able to bring in impactful free agents in the near future is definitely a detriment to this team. And this, like I said, is a significant overpay for a guy that has positional overlapping issues with other players that have prominent roles on the roster. So for a lot of reasons, I just don't really like this. Let's see, what other players could they have used this mid-level on? Jay Crowder would probably be the other ideal fit. So Jay Crowder and Paul Millsap, if you're going to use the mid-level, use it on one of those two. They can come in, take on a solid role at the 4 position, be a 3-and-D 4 guy who can space the floor. Millsap is actually a bit more than 3-and-D. He still has some pop off the bounce. I don't think that he's going to be gettable, so that means that Crowder is probably the target. You're trotting out a starting lineup of D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, Josh Okogie / Malik Beasley, Jay Crowder, and Karl Anthony Towns. That's actually not a terrible team. I don't think they make the playoffs in this stacked Western Conference, but I do think that they would be respectable and competitive in a lot of the games they play. So, yeah, that's something I would definitely think about if I were the Timberwolves. If you can't get Jay Crowder or Paul Millsap, don't resort to overspending on the mid-level. Don't give it to Kent Bazemore or Mo Harkless or somebody like that. Use it wisely and either get Jay Crowder or Paul Millsap or focus on retaining Juancho Hernangomez to be your slide-in 4 guy for the near future. They also need to sign a backup center. I think John Henson is my favorite backup center on the market because I think that he has a lot of viability in the NBA as a bouncy guy who can protect the rim on defense and is a solid rim runner on offense. So he would be someone I would think about bringing in on a minimum contract. So pretty much the path for this team moving forward is sign a power forward. 3 options: Millsap, Crowder, Hernangomez, and then sign a backup center because I think they're pretty set at every other position. And actually, Naz Reid might be able to play the backup center position. So overall, now that I talk about it, this isn't the worst move for the Timberwolves, but I do think that it's a gross overpay, and they could have used this cap space better. And in the future, this is really going to hamstring them, and they're going to end up regretting this. Let me know in the comments section what you think. Like I said, I think the biggest problem here is with the rotation, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to find enough minutes for a guy on this kind of contract. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I think I've talked about everything I need to, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you all again very soon.